Hello and welcome to a live code hangout. We're going to be doing some Godot game development today. Working on an app, so it's not quite a game, but not quite an app. It's a little bit in between. The goal is to help us learn piano technique, namely chords and scales and arpeggios. Let's take a quick look at the app so far. It's a practice app. So it shows you at the bottom of the screen a piano, and it's telling me to press this C with the first finger. This is the scale. Yeah, I'm in the scale of C major. So it's walking me through this scale. And we've got a built-in metronome, so you can practice in time. And later we might add a practice timer so that you can set a session length, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, and practice these techniques, scales, chords, and arpeggios. The app is open source on GitHub. And today we're going to add some exercises in each of these categories. So I'll have to think a little bit about code organization, where and how to define these exercises for each of the keys in each of the categories. We will use Copilot to help us write the code. So I'll be jumping back and forth between VS Code and the GitHub editor, since I have this nice Copilot interface here. Most of our code is in the scripts folder. I think I have one script that I believe is in the scenes folder. I'm going to try to organize that real quick. Let's create a branch. And in this branch, we'll focus just on the scales. It's a bit tricky because now I will have a conditional select where if I don't add all of the exercises at once, this secondary selection of the key is not going to be so meaningful. So I'm going to introduce a little bit of accidental complexity here. If I just start by defining the scales for all keys, but not the chords and arpeggios for all keys, it'll be inconsistent. And if I selected chords in the key of another key, I won't have any input, and that'll be a confusing user experience. Fortunately, this app isn't published right now. So I'll think about the scope of this branch. Maybe I should just include all of the exercises, at least in the next release. But one branch at a time I think is okay since it's under development. Okay, so we will start with scales though. So what I'm going to do is create a new file, scales, GD. And if I look at, I believe they are defined in the piano GD. So yeah, we have an exercise manager and exercises. I believe the exercise manager should be responsible for these functions to create the exercises, instead of the piano, which is it's kind of the main. This could almost be called app. It's like the main app. So if I move these, then I would just need to make sure we have a reference to the exercise manager in the piano, so that when we initialize, find where we do this. Yeah, so this is interesting. It's already partially migrated there. So let's go ahead and move them all there with the comment. I think we'll run it, and yeah, so it works. Simplifying our piano function. Now the idea is I'll have a bunch of named variables in here. For example, these are the scale notes for the C major scale. So I believe I can just have a C major scale definition in scales.gd. See if this works. If this works, then I can give this as an example to Copilot and help it generate more scales for me. So I think we're done with that. And it's GD. I think you can load a GD. It's kind of like the way you import. And then scales would be then scales C major. Right. I'll have to put some metadata in there. There's probably a lot better way of organizing this. But so far this will be manageable. C, we'll have to have like sharp flats type of things. But I just want to take one step forward and try to get these exercises in place. All right. So this is the challenge I have to load. EXERCR. Yeah, so that's not going to work how I was expecting, it looks like. But if I open drag and drop, okay. So yeah, scripts. Let's try it again. Yes, so that's something I'll have to ask. I think I've heard this complaint that basically people wish Godot had namespaces. Like, can I just import variables from another namespace, another file? There's probably a way to do it. I'm probably pretty close. But yeah, this is referring to a file. So what I need to do, is see if Copilot kind of understands how this should work. Unready var scales load and new, you sort of instantiate it. Interesting. Okay, well, let's try that out. So save that. Sort of like creating a class. And I could give it class name. Because everything's a class if I need it to have a class name. Interesting. Which is an inherent or implicit namespace. Yes. All right, we're good to go. So I think I'll ask Copilot to generate some more scales for me. And we should do these. There's the enharmonics. Let's see what it does. I didn't need to give it so much context. That's a bit of overkill there. But it knows the right place to do it. And I'll be right back while it's generating that code. All right, thanks for your patience. Now let's see, where do we go? So I was closing these. We have some changes in scales GD. Let me just clean this up real quick while that's still fresh on my mind. All we really need to look at for right now is just scales and exercise manager for selecting these different keys. Probably the piano scene to give the select box. Yeah, so let's see what it did. Okay, so we have quite a bit of code here. And it's using flats. This is the tricky part because they're enharmonics. So it went around the circle of fourths. And notice, actually it's going clockwise. So it did follow the circle of fifths. Interesting. And with comments too. This is really nice. And we'll just define enharmonics can be a reference to the enharmonic value. So sharps, F sharp would be G flat, interestingly. I'll have to cross that bridge when we arrive there. But let's go with that. Man, it's really helpful. And then we'll repeat that for the left. And hopefully this, file won't be too large at that point, that it will be excessive in the scope of these large language models. And I'll break down these exercise types into several different files for that. However, now we need to allow the player. So let's just say we'll commit this without deep review. I think I'll just go with it, and we'll be play testing this as we go. All 12 keys essentially. I should have said all keys. Let me ask it. We'll call it major because that's specifically what we're after. And this is going to be probably a lot of several different files, major, minor, like natural minor, harmonic minor, all that. It's important to practice. Each scale includes correct fingerings for the right hand, ensuring proper technique needs to play. Great. And F sharp, it spelled it out. That's actually the same convention I was thinking in my mind. Makes sense and flat. So yeah, this would have been how I would have coded it. It would just save a lot of time. And I'm not exactly sure that these are the right fingerings, but we'll find that out soon. All major keys. At some point I might actually need to name this major scales. Let's just do that now. Yeah, to scales major. Yeah, because otherwise it will be very long. But this is another feature I just realized. We're going to have to add left-hand and right-hand selection. And hands together also. Interesting. It'll be good though. It'll be good. I'm just seeing if this can rename a file for me and change the reference in another file. So kind of getting an idea of how, what are the limits and capabilities of Copilot. So it has to regenerate the code. So it's interestingly, it kind of makes sense as a language model that generates language. So it's not inherently able to perform actions, I guess. Let's wait till it's finished. Rename the file. It didn't just simply rename it though, it seemed to have generated it. Let's see what happens. Scales major GD and the exercise manager. So now we will come over here to exercise manager, and it looks like we've just got to change up here. Major GD, accept that. And then over here we have the diff scales major. How do I guess it's just already accepted. I mean, it didn't delete the old file, so that's an interesting thing. It regenerated or generated a new file and left the old one in place. Okay, no problem. Accept. So we'll delete that. Cool. Save. Once I accept the changes, then I need to save the changes. Okay, cool. Okay. All right, I'm not going to publish yet. Now we need to allow the student to select the scale. The right hand will come later. Now, from my perspective, I think we would create a dictionary. I think we already have created a dictionary of the choices, and they sort of map to a function. Now, the function is going to have to fetch the correct scale. We have these variables, named variables, so we can kind of just use that dictionary. Let's see how Copilot manages this. It takes a little bit of the load off my brain, but it's this scale and this dictionary here where we've got exercises, and scales actually has now like at least 12 entries where I have to look at the enharmonics. And to keep the scope small, I think I should pass in the piano for the context, but not ask too much. So I'll pass in the piano scene. I'll open the piano scene here, and we've got this select box. So I actually need to open piano GD, which is dynamically populated. Note name, set up fingering system, MIDI event, and it's actually under the key drop down. Okay, so we get the key drop down here, and we initialize the drop downs here. All right, so actually it doesn't need the other ones. Good. Let's go ahead and in fact, we could dynamically initialize the second drop down, the key select drop down based on the selection in the first, so we don't have a usability bug right away. So you select scales, and since we have all the scale exercises, we could then dynamically populate the keys drop down. Okay, so coming back to it, I don't need this longer, just need these two. Okay, how do I formulate this? I've committed everything, so we need to update the select box. I'm going to just say what we need to do and not necessarily the how or the data structures or anything like that. See what the approach this comes up with. Because sometimes it's, frankly better than I would have thought. Other times it needs coaching. So let's see what we get with an initial prompt. So it needs to load the specific scale when the key is selected. Optionally, we should only initialize all of the available keys when the scale exercise type is selected, since we don't currently have arpeggios or chords for the other key types. I'm thinking this is like a data type, like a dictionary. We should have key values, and those should map to the scale, the relevant scale or function calling the argument. But let's passing the argument in, or the argument to pass to the function. Let's see what it does. Just giving the scales major GD and exercise manager as. One thing I like about doing this with Claude, which is available by the way, but Claude can give me very good explanations of what it's doing. The Copilot is very concise and generates a lot of code, is code oriented, but not a lot of explanation. So let's see what we get. So update key dropdown, initialize the dropdown. So the key dropdown is now a new function. It's called within. And if exercise dropdown is get item text scales, cool. Then the keys are that. Wow, else we're just gonna have that. So there it did that usability improvement. I don't like having these sort of loosely coupled configuration, like this configuration of an array from the data. I would maybe look for a more later unified way of making sure that these have corresponding definitions, scale definitions, for example. But let's just go forward with this. So yeah, on the exercise type selected, it's going to update the key dropdown. So now it's decoupled. We don't have to do everything together, and then we can call it in multiple places. Cool. And now it's going to create a scale. So we have this arbitrary create scale method. Okay. And it's going to call exercise method with the selected key, which can be a bit ambiguous. And where was key defined? Is there? Let's come back to it. All right, scale notes. Scales get key to lower. This is interesting. So this won't quite work because of the sharp flat. Well, maybe it will. It's just concatenating it though. That won't work. Okay. I think we need an intermediary structure just to make everything explicit and tied together. But this is already a really good step in that direction. So I can accept it as it is. And I'm just anticipating that this keys to lower won't work. This line won't quite work as far as I understand. And flat symbol B. It's actually using B, which is another convention I've seen that explicitly defines. So we'll see if we can map them. Just create a map with each of these as like a key. That should be a legal key. And then for the value, it could be another dictionary map. For example, the function to call, it could just be actually the function to call directly, or what argument to pass to the function. But yeah, this is a good start. And then we just pop that key in there. Good. Yeah, that was, and plus with this, you approach, string concatenation and mutating it, like to lower, modify. It's not very explicit, and it's hard. The tooling can't really trace, if you've got an error there, you can't use type annotations necessarily on that. So I think this is an improvement, and it should work. Let's just double check. And if we get any bugs or errors, then we will pass those on. Close all of these and load piano manager. Okay, cool. We got our first bug. Invalid access to property key base type nil. Okay. So this scales. And we'll scripts exercise scales major G. Interesting. It's probably because it's an onReady. So I think we need also onReady here. There's probably something happening where this is created earlier in the life cycle of that script, like when the app is loading, when the game is loading, and this is waiting for a life cycle for that node to have initialized and running that afterwards. My guess. Let's find out. So we got C, we got all of our selections. G, yes. That is cool. And if I select an arpeggio or chord, create C major chord inversions. Okay, so we have an interface that we've modified, and well, maybe I should just go ahead and do it. It's so quick to turn those around. I'll get another cup of tea, and we'll come back and we'll do the arpeggio and the chords with the inversions in the key, in each key, which is a pretty big one. I'll have to think about, actually we'll just start with the chord inversions. If I select C major, it's just going to show me the C major inversions. Later I'll say if you select C major, it's going to do the diatonic chord inversions for the whole key of C. But that's a bigger exercise, and we might want to distinguish between that. Sometimes a person might just want to practice the F major, inversions for that major triad alone. Okay, we'll think about that. I'll be right back. Great. All right, we do have a bug, so I'm hesitant to commit this. I have to think if we want to solve this. And not every commit has to build or necessarily run in all conditions. It's okay to have transient bugs from my perspective in a development branch. Now the branch ideally would be clean and running and tested, which I'm not also doing here before merging into the main branch. So the problem here is we just have an inconsistent interface, and I could probably pass this over to Copilot, and it can probably fix that. So maybe we should just try that. and it just is a C major needs just a default argument, or what we'll just do is pass in C major there. The reason I'm committing is it's going to modify the file, and this is a pretty good state if I want to roll back to this. Then I'll need to commit. Yeah, so it's just going to update the interface there to accept an optional key parameter and maintain consistent interface. Okay, very cool. Small change, and we'll go ahead and include those exercises. In a subsequent session, I'll have to think about the right-hand, left-hand routines and hands together. That's the third option. Another thing that I've been considering, and we'll come to when we get into the arpeggios and chords, is the reuse of the chord definitions. For example, the inversions or the arpeggios for like C major is used in multiple keys. And so I don't want to have every key be defined uniquely. So in other words, we can compose exercises from smaller chunks. I can, the C major diatonic arpeggios, that'll be how we'll distinguish it. The C major arpeggio, C major or inversions versus C major diatonic inversions, for example, we can have the whole key there. Yeah, I can compose that of the C major inversion and G major inversions and things like that. All right, cool. We'll come back to this. And so yeah, I just needed to update the interfaces, and okay, you can provide default values. Cool. Again, I'm learning all this GD script and Copilot and things. Coming from a background of primarily JavaScript and Python. For the past like 6 years, I've been heavily focusing on Python. Great. So that looks clean and should resolve our little. I'll need to accept those and save it, right? What's this? Accept. Okay, cool. And we'll. It's running, so then I need to do this and then close it over here. Rerun that. And if I choose arpeggio chords, ooh, dang it. Yeah. Let me make sure closing this and make sure those changes applied and that I saved. It's also defaulting to right hand. This is good too. Piano. Position note, key C. Yeah, it was working. I think there were some issues with synchronizing the file changes. No, wait. Okay, well, let's go forward then. Oops. And we will define the chord and chord inversions for the right hand. That's correct. That's right, classical. Oh yeah, I understand what it means. Got it. Yeah, interesting, cool. So, yep, and it went octave up. Later we can decide if it goes back down, and then we'll have a lot of flexibility. Eventually we might move this to a sort of way that they can be configured at runtime by like a teacher or somebody who wants to program a lesson plan, for example. That's just an idea. That's a big long shot. But the current theme is just to help a student who wants to learn and rehearse and iterate these to get them into our muscle memory. So this does take a little bit. It's quite a heavy query here. And this is another example of why I'm wanting to break it down into files, so there's like less context for the large language model to have to process and generate. Although they do have fairly large context windows, it's error prone, more prone for like hallucinations to occur. I think it also helps reviewers, like code reviewers, to have things more organized. Okay, I'll be right back while we're. Okay, so we've got some right-hand inversions for all of the triads, the major triads. I think we'll double check it. Go and accept that. And yeah, this is getting larger, so we can see this line, this file would be around, upwards of 500 lines. But I think we did make it all the way around the circle of fifths. C, D, A, E, B, F, C, G, oops, F C, this should be F sharp major, and the fingerings are correct along with the conventional chord name. So asking it to peer review itself basically. Now, does that mean it has to generate the whole thing again? I suppose it would have to, wouldn't it? Yeah, it's not like a human reviewer. Can it generate just the diff? How does that work? I'm not sure if the models are capable of generating diffs at this point, although the tooling obviously is built around that workflow, and it would make the large language model generated output a lot more efficient if it only had to generate the diff, less resource intensive. So I could see there would be as for like Microsoft and in particular to encourage the OpenAI to support diffs, revisions. But it puts a space there. Okay, we'll accept it. Okay. What we'll do is now we'll do arpeggios major. Yeah, triads. Down. For now, that's okay. But usually when we practice arpeggios, it's nice to do this rocking motion and to do it across octaves, like 2 octaves, 3 octaves. So we'll have to think about how to do that. All in time, though. Feature just working correctly, refining it, building further features. Very cool. So we'll commit these, and I'll do more thorough review and testing, make any corrections. Right hand. Yes, excellent. So we've got exercise manager. Exercise manager is in there twice for some reason. Probably because of open tab. With sub-references. This might not be a good architectural thing in the long run, but just for the time being, I want like one top level when you select the key. So I have to think of the hierarchy here. Right now, the hierarchy left to right on the user interfaces, you select the exercise type and then the keys. But the other way around, I think the goal is actually to learn the exercises for each key. So the keys are like the primary thing, and then the exercises are the sub thing. Exercise type is the sub thing. And we'll have another thing called the hand, left, right, both handedness. I'll have to think of the hierarchy if I have this nested data structure. The reason I like the nested data structure, though, is it helps me remember that I have to define a function to generate this exercise for all of the keys. I want to make sure all of the keys are covered. That's why they're most important. And yeah, at some point there will be duplication, but then for each key, I want to make sure we have all of the exercises defined. And then for each of the exercises, I want to make sure I write out for each hand. What would that be called? It's basically, is that a generic or it's just like an interface? I can't remember the word for that. But the key is I want to be explicit with like the expected structure, kind of self-documenting code. Because even though this is generated by a large language model, it should definitely be readable and easily maintained by humans, right? That's like we are the sort of orchestrators here. We're trying to manage this code in the long run. We need to understand it. And even from the perspective of like working with these large language models, the more explicit the code is and self-documenting it is, it also helps the model generate more accurate output, I believe. Okay. Let's just start with the multidimensional map, and maybe I can be more polite. But also, we're using GPT-4o, and it's been pretty successful. Oh, it sort of did. It did for some reason. Let's see what happens here. Yeah, that's actually correct. So wait, let's stop. Accept that, and I'll just save it. Wait, accepting it. We're in a bit of a borked state. Accepting those. Let's see. So we have that exercise map new, exercise map, skills major. This is, what is it complaining about? Too many arguments for new call. This could be just a problem with the VS Code language server for GD script. I don't like having that big blob of red in that. Let's see if it runs. Close all. And yeah, our only change is this exercise manager, so we can roll this back and make the request again. Yes, so interesting. This could be, so it is, the language server is working correctly. That's a good sign. I have had some weird errors where the code ran correctly, but in VS Code I had some, squiggles. Let's try this. GD is not the most widely used language. Also, it's under active development, so the training, the older version could be the training cutoff, prior to the training cutoff, and now there's some new semantics. I don't need this named entity, but I like it. I like having a map. Okay, so it didn't really change anything. What if I just take off the new from everything? I don't know how initialization works. Do you need named arguments? Yeah, maybe that works. Yeah, that makes sense. So, whoops. Let me just see if Claude's available here. Think for everything. If not, I can pop over to Claude real quick on the desktop. Yeah, it needs a constructor. Okay. So they're not like data classes. Ooh, yeah, it did. Ooh, that's really clean, in fact. Although, it's not explicit, it's implicit that we have all the keys there. Oh, I see, yeah. And it's already snake case here, so that might be redundant. So I open exercise manager. See, it's not applied though. This is the weird thing. What the heck? If I save it, where is this? Claude, it's like a temporary buffer. All right. So the code is looking a little bit better. We maybe don't need the to snake case thing. Close all. Oh, that's fine. Stop that and run that. It could also have been because the game was running. Scales are chords. Wait. Chords. Yeah, so I select the chords. It gets the error within the chord. Create chord inversions function. So let's see if we can have Copilot fix that for us. Like, it's very direct. Fix the error and create chord inversions function by ensuring the correct type is used for add position method. Interesting. This is a reminder of why type safety is very useful. Type hinting, type annotations, even in dynamically typed languages like GD script and Python, just to add those annotations, they make things a little bit more safe. Accept that. See what it did. And it probably also updated the arpeggios. Close those for the minute because there's been some weird issues with applying the changes from Copilot. Okay, valid type and function add position has base resource practice sequence here, and it's the same error though. Okay, so we're at a bit of an impasse. Position is just an array. Of piano notes. So maybe if I also add practice sequence GD to the context, it'll help me out. Overall though, this editing experience, this code editing experience with Copilot, and probably similarly other tools like Cursor. I think this is really helpful and probably the future of software engineering. I know there's a lot of concern of the software engineering web development, for example, will be fully automated. I don't necessarily, predict the future, but in my direct experience, I think we're going to converge on some kind of hybrid solution where we have tools helping us, but still need to have some skill at reading, debugging, evaluating code, understanding the code that's written, as well as guiding the large language model, providing the correct context. So let's see, which also leads me into some blind alleys though where I don't fully understand the code. And that's kind of the case here. I'll have to look more closely at the code and perhaps use more strong typing. But yeah, so here it's adding type annotations here. Invalid type and function add position. Base reference resource practice sequence array argument 1 does not have the same element type as expected type. Okay. I'll reopen VS Code and we'll step through this. And actually, let's get a second opinion from Claude over here on the desktop. All right. So I've just got a Godot, Claude chat around Godot. I'm telling it I'm going to provide it with some context. So we've got exercise manager. And the other one that's necessary from the debugging perspective is in the practice sequence. Following function produces an error, which I don't quite understand. I might need to, the change didn't get applied, but okay. Let's add stronger type annotations. And this is what I like about Claude. You can say explanatory. I'm able to explain the type safety issue, how to fix it in Godot 4.3. I think also Claude has a more recent training cutoff than GPT 4.0, so it's got more recent knowledge of changes in GD script. And generally, I found it to be a kind of a stronger coding companion in some ways, but the moving back and forth between Claude and VS Code is not the ideal approach to coding. So I'm having a lot of more user-friendly, developer-friendly experience with Copilot. In the practice sequence, we have export sequence array, and the method as an array of piano notes. Okay. I'd like it to be consistent. The error occurs because an array and an array of piano notes are different types in Godot's type system. Yeah, okay. No, because it's an array of piano notes because you can have chord progressions, and each chord is an array, and then a sequence is an array of these progressions. So yeah, multi-dimensional array. And what's now? Get some squiggles. Nested type collections are not supported. Nested typed collections are not supported. GD script. That's a bummer. Do I need an intermediary entity here? They're not all chords, so let's see if it runs. This is a very GD script specific, whatever, I'm trying to think, GD script specific feedback. So yeah, it's probably accurate, but it might be an older version. I don't know. My language server should be coming from Godot itself though. All right, so we've done that. Now for your create chord inversions functions, we should ensure the types match. Change our sequence array piano note. This is also an annoying thing. It's not too bad. All right, let's step back real quick, discarding those. We'll try it one more time. I just need to use it. All right, so I've reverted to where we've just defined exercises, chord inversions and arpeggios. Let's step forward. Instead of adding both the chord inversions arpeggios to the user interface select, let's just add the chord inversions to the user interface select. Let's run the game. So it seems to work. Be very broad and vague in my definition here. It's a bit of a balance. Sometimes you need to be specific to give it the right context and instruction, but not so specific, kind of like defining a task in GitHub or whatever that I imply a specific solution. Let's see what happens. Which I previously had that intermediary data structure, I think, which is a good idea, but let's just get this thing working, hopefully. Okay, so the scope of this change is smaller than the previous. Create arpeggios, key, string, practice, sequence. Start with the, so now we're loading chords and arpeggios. And it did create an exercise map. So it has this previous conversation in context. Okay, interesting, including the Claude response. Interesting. Or are these old kind of vestigial changes? I don't know. I think this is trying to load the global because of a parser error. That's the weird thing that's confusing me. So currently I'm only expecting the chord inversions to work. Then we'll have to look at the piano, the arpeggios. Let's hope this works. Inversions. Yes. All right. So this was an example. I had previously asked maybe the model to do too much at once. We have to chew slowly, take small bites, and the models are no different. If I give it, sometimes you want to give it multiple requests to save tokens and be more efficient, but with complex things like writing code, I guess doing too much leads to errors, and I got tangled up a bit in the output. So I stepped back and I'm slicing the problem down. And this is the same way we would do it with a regular task, right? We break up our tasks into smaller checkpoints, kind of where I can get a little bit of progress to a sort of stable state and checkpoint that, commit that. So we'll go ahead and commit this. And it luckily did these nice refactors I had previously asked for. Hopefully we'll have better success now with the arpeggio. And I didn't test the arpeggios, I'll come back to it, but we'll commit. And let's just say, same prompt. So I'm just noticing that these here are Copilot edits kind of, I think. And if I have multiple of those open, I might be getting a bit confused about the state of things. I don't also see the diffs, what the difference is, but let's see. Create arpeggios, piano node new, node data are, I think it's basically following the same pattern. And I can just check the diff, reload that, or maybe it already was working and I just didn't test that out because I assumed it wouldn't work. So let's try it again. Interesting. Yeah, they're all working. Very cool. For all the keys, I'm assuming I'll do some more thorough testing off stream. I'll try to load this on my iPad and connect it to a piano. That's the main goal here, is just to have a piano practice app and then to share it. I like to share these things. Just check our debugger real quick. Just some warning. Yeah, this is interesting. I was noticing that about key earlier, where we have this concept key, which refers to piano, like a musical key, but also piano keys, and then also like kind of dictionary keys. But in this case, it wasn't. It's not a reserved name in Godot, but position is apparently. So we should like copy that error. And what I want to do is sort of refactor this at a little bit of a high level to avoid name collisions with reserved names. We'll start with that request. Bunch of unused signals, integer division, which doesn't seem to be problematic right now. So I'm going to ignore these warnings, and the signals are okay as well. But the shadowed variable base class, I think that's something we should be on the lookout for. So I pasted an error. Let's use more specific names to avoid shadowing reserved names from GDScript, and perhaps also to distinguish example music keys from piano keys from dictionary keys. I don't think it's an issue here, but it's probably a good practice. Here we go. Oh, I see what it did. It went all the way to the sharps, then it started going in fourths. To get the flats. Well, it didn't go kind of clockwise around the circle, but that's probably okay. We can look at this sorting later. Maybe this is a more conventional way of learning, approach to learning. See how we're just naming things a little bit different. Music key and sequence is still I'm thinking about renaming this practice sequence to be exercise. All right, so we got all those, we saved it. It's kind of a weird thing. I'm getting a bit confused as to why the changes aren't always visible to Git. My source control isn't always picking those up. So I had to copy and paste it over there. It's kind of a bit annoying. Exercise sequences are pretty good. Where did I see that? No, anyway. Would be a better name for this. All right, so let's run it. So we're already seeing a bug here. Got to try it there, but the flats are not correct. This is because you don't mix sharps and flats. So we do have a bug with the enharmonics. That's kind of, I thought that would be an issue. We'll fix that. So it plays like the root. No, it doesn't. It plays the A flat, third and fifth. We'll come back to that. It is running though, so that's a good sign. This is kind of why I was thinking about composing these a little bit more, but like having smaller structures and then building bigger structures out of the smaller structures. We need a test suite. Yes. I think what it was is all the sharps and flats, the enharmonic ones, when they're defined as flats, aren't rendering in the UI. So we need the enharmonic equivalents. So A flat doesn't have, it's all enharmonics, is all flats. E flat is also. Oh no, because they're starting on the flat A. But the triads, let's see. If I go to A flat, yeah, there's only one natural, or it wouldn't have any sharps in there. So basically, we need the mapping, the enharmonic mapping. Just describe the bug, not even the how or making a request. I just say we have a bug in all the enharmonic keys where flat keys are not rendering. It seems that our logic only knows how to handle natural and sharp notes. So what's a good solution for that? Let's see what it comes up with. Yeah, and we could see interestingly, so it has to have B flat, and it's just got to map the enharmonics to the other keys. That's probably a good solution, although the spelling matters in music. We'll have to be careful about this. When we do start spelling messages on the screen, like the key pressed, which we already kind of do, in fact, we need to spell it flat in a flat key and sharp in a sharp key. I don't know the full reasonings behind this, but you just don't mix sharps and flats, and there's some, when you work out all of the keys, it just works out that way. And for, I think, just so you don't confuse people and you don't clutter up the staff, you have only one type of symbol there, unless there's some composition where, well, yeah, you'll have natural, but that's the exception. All right, so now we just helper exercise, create exercise maps, helper method. So if it's one of the flat keys there, we'll just map it to the relevant thing. But the problem is now these exercises don't exist. So it won't be able to load that necessarily because those variables don't exist. We name the flat keys here flat. This is again the same issue though, the spelling shouldn't be mixed. So I don't think this is the right solution. because the flat, if it's a B flat key, these all should be flat. Okay, so we have a chords major, arpeggios major, chords major, scales major. This is a big ask. So since musical spelling matters, we need to correctly handle flat and sharp notes in keys. Example, B flat major has flat notes for the enharmonic spellings. So flat notes are first class citizens, and we can't simply substitute a sharp equivalent, as that would confuse the student. We may need to improve all of our exercises to include the correct sharp and flat exercises and ensure the exercise manager can handle flat notes and sharps correctly. Chords, B flat, no. All right, so we're gonna start a little bit of a fresh session there. I'm gonna close the project. The spelling is a bit of an interesting one. Now, yeah, well, we'll have selected the key signature, so we'll know how to spell things correctly. I'll fix that one later, this spelling deal, with a little notes pressed spelling thing. But I want to keep our context small. I think this is enough scope here, and hopefully enough of a prompt. So what changes did we get? Maybe it is actually. Maybe these are actually working correctly, and what I'm realizing is now we need to pass that or signal those keys are pressed. Okay, and we have a signal that's emitting, and to the note display GD. Yeah, so again, just restating the problem, but with improved context, not from my prompt, but from the selecting of the files. So now it's going to add, now that I've passed in the right context, the right files, the piano keys and note display, I think it'll be able to make the modifications we need to render the flat notes. Accept those, accepting that. Yeah, here we go. Saving both of these changes. Now things are working correctly, and the revision control can pick those up. So we just added these to the note names list, and we're maintaining this note names list in a couple of places, so that's not ideal. This is an example where refactoring this means that I would solve the bug only in one place, and perhaps even the exercise manager could have been using this same array, and I've already caught the issue. All right, so we'll come back to that later. Perhaps, I don't know. So we're gonna go to chords, and we're gonna pick a flat key. Yeah. Woo. Okay. Now this could just be that the sharp keys aren't working. So C sharp is not working. The F is not there, so let's check in code. In the actual exercise for C sharp. Oh, yeah, that's right. This is the crazy thing about enharmonic spellings, is that F is actually E sharp. Yeah, this is so confusing. In other words, each key has one of each letter in there. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And you have this combination of sharps and flats, and there should be only one instance of that. C sharp, I think, is maybe not technically, I don't know if it's technically, I mean it is, and we just have to know the enharmonic spelling of C sharp includes this E, because it has to have an E in there, but it can't be E because you have to go major, major, and you land on the F key. So in the context of C sharp major, because the formula for major scale, whole landing on F, this has to be considered or spelled as E sharp. This is very subtle and confusing, and probably we would play more in the key of D flat than C sharp, but I don't know. I'm not that advanced. I barely know the key of C. I know that one at least, but maybe I'm learning G and F right now. So this is well beyond my experience level. And we don't have D flat, so I think C sharp is the deal here, and that means E sharp needs to be F, or in other words, yeah, it needs to run to the F key. Yeah, no need. I'm going to commit this though. I think it did fix it. I think, for example, if I look at B flat again, you know, I think we'll be good. A flat. Yeah, this is a gotcha. Oh, no, we're good. Wait. I gotta pick chords first. Okay. So we'll go F. That's the easy one. Yeah, so this, okay, let's come back to this, find out what's the deal here. B flat, 1, 3, 5. Got the, what I think is this is the wrong exercise data. I got the fingerings correct. The notes are correct. B flat. No, they're wrong. No, wait. B flat. So here, B flat. The 1 should be here, B flat. Instead of, right now it's E. And let's just check the exercise data for B flat. Okay, B flat 4. Yeah. Oh, this is so challenging. All right, so enharmonic spellings. Surprisingly difficult, not only to learn, but to code correctly. Yes, we will get this fixed. And this is also reminding me of the importance of unit tests. I think we're going to need a unit test to cover this, to break down this problem once we solve it. That'll be another adventure because I don't know how to do unit testing in Godot. And as far as I understand, it doesn't kind of include that capability out of the box. You have to install a package or something like that. It's maybe an official unit testing approach, but I think there's some configuration needed. So. Manual testing and then prompting, and probably have to do some manual debugging here. Breakpoint debugging, that'll help. Let's start with 1. So what are the changes I got to refresh? My memory, what have we changed so far? So if I look at the diff, we've added the flat keys. So I think that's a good one. Add special formatting for the accidental sharpen flat notes. If sharpen note name or flat note name, color cyan. Okay, so we're handling sharps and flats there. And this is just basically duplicating that. Okay. The last time I switched to Claude, these preview ones maybe are not stable. That's why they're in preview. But I think the functionality is also a bit unstable and kind of started to get some weird behaviors in this session. So hopefully that doesn't happen again. But I'll describe this issue to Claude. Okay, so I run the game. And we're going to hop into, I think all of these were good to go. I could go to chords like the sharp keys. You know, they were legit. A, C sharp, E, G sharp, B, D sharp, F sharp. I know some of these by muscle memory. Here we go, our first one. C sharp renders C sharp and G sharp. Yeah, that's played with the DNF. Like this is literally, I've gone to these triads in root position and got those in muscle memory just practicing. This is the whole point of this app, is you have this in muscle memory and you can actually like then see it in your mind's eye. You can see the chord, which is pretty cool. I'd like to be able to see a whole key, for example, the whole thing in my mind's eye. Then I can like look at the piano keyboard and say, okay, I'm in this key. I just see them all, kind of like an overlay. It's kind of interesting, or you feel it. That's I think the ultimate goal is to have the touch. Cool. B flat is not quite correct. This just needs to come here. E flat. This is an interesting one. So E flat is here. So I'm not sure what's going on, to be honest. This is why I'm really getting help from his rendering. He's rendering like D flat, E, G. It's just all wonky. It's like E flat 3, and this is like C, C4, C sharp. So we'll try this with Copilot using Anthropic Claude, and Claude's giving me a little bit more info step by step, and seems to be working, generating the edits correctly. So that's a good sign. I can swap over to the desktop and get some more step-by-step help, but let's see if this works. First, we need to understand that the MIDI notes can have multiple enharmonic spellings. See, F is also E sharp. F4 is also E sharp. The issue seems to be in how we map note names to MIDI numbers and back. We need to keep track of preferred spellings for each key signature. The problem is likely the piano keys GD file note handling. We need to modify the note mapping system to handle enharmonic equivalence correctly and maintain consistent note spellings. This is incredibly complicated stuff for my mind, and as a beginning GD script developer, or even, if I was using a language I'm much more proficient in, this is a hard challenge. This is a very hard thing. We're going to update the note display for the same note name mappings. This is unfortunate because I have these mappings across the project. So it's making it an actual map instead of just an array now. Interesting. Note to MIDI offset. Oh, interesting. MIDI to note preferred. Oh. So the solution creates a comprehensive mapping between the note names and the MIDI offsets that includes enharmonic equivalence. MIDI offset from the root, I suppose. I'm not sure what it's offsetting from. Defines preferred spellings for each MIDI number and uses consistent note names across the application. Eligible sharp and flat key signatures. We will accept it. It's not a big change, and perhaps it's easy to understand. Save that. Save that. Now let's see if it works. Later we'll go through and perhaps ask it to refactor these things in a way that's, very obvious and self-documenting, and perhaps even simplified. No, it's not working because it didn't modify that. Oh. This is a problem with Claude when it generates code. It's been trained on a lot of JavaScript and Python. And tabs versus spaces is real. The struggle is real. But just kind of use spaces. If we, unfortunately, GD script kind of defaults to tabs, and I think spaces kind of won out if we would just kind of go with spaces. I don't have a strong opinion, just noticing it's so more conventional in so many spaces. All right, go to chords to see if it actually worked. It works. It's really good. At this time of the day, and I'm on the working on the weekend here, and I'm already confused enough about music theory, trying to make an app to just learn to play physically, like muscle memory. This Claude is really worth, this is just such a great, these are helpful tools. It's not just Claude, but also just Copilot in general. Being able to use multiple models, that's really cool. Wow. I think this is, at this point, pretty good. I'll ask Claude if it recommends a way to not to avoid these duplicate constants, basically. Maybe that's not the case anymore. Let me go check. Create a musical constants singleton and auto load that in the project. So we'll have to set up the auto load. Remove the duplicate constants from piano keys and note display. Update the references to use the new singleton. So it's creating the constants, then it's modifying these two files, and we may have to do the configuration manually. Although I think you can configure auto loads in GDScript as well, but it doesn't currently have in its context our main app, so it doesn't know necessarily that piano GD is kind of the entry point in some way. So yeah, so it's telling me how to create the auto load. Very cool. And this, I do like Claude. It's really a good model. Still generating a bit. Multiple files. I did commit the previous thing, so we can roll back pretty easily. I think I can do this project settings kind of while it's still generating. Ah, there it goes. I'll just accept everything. So it should delete the whole file, right? Go to auto loads here, globals, add, scripts, musical constants. Oh, interesting. That's a good pattern. Put it in the auto loads folder, and then we'll add that as new musical constants. Very cool. All right, we will close all of those. So I guess the project settings, I need to change save these. Project settings autosave, I guess. And we'll try running the project now. Or not the whole project, but just the cool. Oh yeah, you have to do like this first. Chords, then yeah, I want to see now B flat. Cool. So we did a bit of refactoring there. 4 files. Change the project. Oh, okay, project Godot. I guess that makes sense. It didn't necessarily have that in its state here, so it didn't know to add that here. But that auto load can be defined, is defined by default in text. We did it through user interface. Nice. At this point, I think we're pretty good. And I'm getting pretty tired. It's been 2.5 hours. Not bad progress. 2.5 hours added a big kind of feature. Yeah, it's essentially been a feature, not just adding exercises, but we had to also work through some challenges like the enharmonic spellings. Well, it might be all right for most players to start at B4 instead of B flat 3, B flat 4. But if you start to play 2 octaves and this is a stretch, and the user interface is actually also kind of not going up that high. Also, players have like sometimes 49 key keyboards like I have here. We'll have to think about this from a usability perspective. Right now, we're just getting the functionality to work. Then we're going to get the functionality to be stable and reliable through unit tests, and polish that through some testing and user, like I'm manually testing myself and user feedback perhaps. Yeah, because if we play it, it'll go up to here. That's not too bad. For 2 octaves. Yeah, and that might be something we want to configure. Okay, so next steps, I think we'll look at the left hand exercises and then hands together. That's going to imply we'll need a new selection here. Left hand, right hand, both. Chords, arpeggio, and then the key, I think. So we'll have one more configuration option here. And then we'll refine the exercises so they're in a comfortable playing position and you're not having to lean too far left or right, especially as a beginning piano player. So yeah, this has been another Live Code Hangout. Thanks for stopping by. Hope you're doing well. Have a great day.